introduction. Welcome to Cape Town. My name is Julian. I'm a CEO for G Adventures. A CEO is a Chief Experience Officer. I've been working for G Adventures for close on 8 years. Absolutely love my job, and I really miss being on the road and showing people our beautiful country and nature. These days, we can still dream, right? We can still dream about traveling. So this virtual tour is just to give you a little bit of a taste and a bit of experience of Cape Town, so that when you come back to Cape Town in the future, you can come and see me and I'll show you around Cape Town. So I'm going to take you around. I'm going to show you the beautiful company garden. I'm going to show you some beautiful historical buildings, some old heritage areas, Table Mountain and all its beautifuls and great views, and some secret little hiking trails that you can do, Cape Point, and then we'll take you across to one of the old towns called Simonstown, to a place called Boulders Beach, and show you the African penguin, or the jackass penguin, actually the African penguin. And then we'll end off our day with a lovely glass of wine at Groot Constantia, the oldest wine estate in South Africa. All right, so as you guys can see, this is a coffee place called Bean There Coffee. G Adventures love to support locally owned businesses. So this is Bean There Coffee. They support fair trade coffee, which is small farmers in Africa. They produce coffee. And it's a great place for us to start our day. Let's have a quick cup of coffee, and then we'll carry on. Just quickly about myself, where I come from. I come from a great little town called De Rust, which means the place of rest. During the 1800s, our pioneers used to travel through the area to get into the northern part of southern Africa, coming through the Cape Colony, and the mountain ranges were pretty tough to get through. So they would rest up before they traveled through the passes. The Meyringskloof Pass, it's called. It used to take over a week to get through. This was a pass that was used traditionally by the San people, the first people in southern Africa, and also by the Khoi people, the tribe that were here before the Europeans came. They used to follow elephants and the animal trails, the wildlife tracks, to move around. And later on, the Europeans used this to create passes in the area all along the southern part of southern Africa. The passes, a lot of the passes they used the traditional passes that the Khoi and the San used to use, and the elephants used to use. Some of our beautiful picturesque passes. So anyway, it's a great area for port and sweet wines. There's sheep, ostriches, lovely hiking trails, mountain biking trails, beautiful local farming community, great places to come and have locally owned businesses, great places to come and rest, great place to come and spend a few days of rest on your journey. Let's see, we're going to take a little walk down towards an old church called the St. George's Cathedral. All right, so guys, this is a photo of the company gardens. So this is the company gardens of Cape Town. There you go, you can see this lovely fresh water. So that water is coming from the mountains. This spring water is actually called Kamisa by the local Khoi people. Anyway, just to give you a bit of background, the company gardens were built by the Dutch. The Dutch came to Cape Town, to South Africa in the 1600s, in the mid-1600s, around 1652 in fact. A guy by the name of Jan van Riebeeck arrived from Holland to establish a refreshment station and a great place to grow fresh fruit and vegetables, clean water for the sailors, as the sailors were getting sick from scurvy traveling around to the east from on the boats for so long. Obviously, people suffered from a bit of malnutrition, so they would stop in the Cape and freshen up, get some fresh supplies, and move on towards the east. This was part of the VOC, Dutch East India Company, which was based in Indonesia. So this was to open up the spice route and also the slave route. So before that, around the 1400s, the Portuguese were already stopping off and trading with the local Khoi people. So before the Khoi arrived, the San people were here. The San were nomadic people that would move around as the animals migrate. The Khoi came from a little bit further inland of southern Africa and moved down from around the 1100s and settled around the coastline of southern Africa. These people were the first people that you found in South Africa and in Cape Town. They spoke a clicking language. It's a part of the clicking language. Just a little bit of background about the people that were here before the Europeans. So as you can see in here, they had to grow some lovely fresh vegetables. This is actually a replica of the original gardens. It's a lovely place to go for a stroll. On Saturday mornings they have a local market. If you are in town, pop into the local market. It's supporting people from the actual area called Gardens, it's a little suburb called Gardens. If you look at this, the water, as I said earlier, the lower slopes of Cape Town, from the lower slopes of the mountain were called Kamisa by the local people, which means the place of the sweet water. The beautiful mountain that we'll see a bit later on, Table Mountain, is called Hurikwacha by the local people. So yeah, the Dutch arrived and with that, the slave trade ensued. Later on, I'll take you guys towards the slave lodge and give you a little bit more information about that. So that's just a little bit about the Gardens. So people were brought in along on the ships, and they were brought to Cape Town, and they were actually kept in the slave lodge. And then they were sold off and interned locally to work on local farms and for local businesses, or they were sold off and they went on to the rest of the world. As we walk down from the Company Gardens, the Company Gardens is literally to the right of the slave lodge. After the arrival of the Dutch, Gardens was established. They actually also built a castle a few years later for the protection of the colony. The slave lodge was, they didn't want to intern the local Khoi people. They thought that there would be a problem, which there would have been, right? So they brought in slaves from Indonesia, East Africa, Madagascar, Zanzibar, Java, India, South India, and Indonesia, Malaysia came through, and people were bought and sold. And in this is the slave lodge where people were kept and sold off, and some stayed in the colony working as slaves for people. And South Africa is considered the Rainbow Nation. Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cosmopolitan cities I've been to in the world. Absolutely cosmopolitan, because of all the mixtures of all the different cultures. And one of the reasons is because of the slave trade. People coming from all over the country, and after the emancipation of slavery in 1834, people stayed and made a life for themselves. So St. George's Cathedral, what makes St. George's Cathedral famous is that it was from 1986 to 1996, the St. George's Cathedral was run by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the first black African bishop in South Africa. So if you look on the left-hand side of the building there, now Bishop Tutu was a very, very well-known man, famous for his humanitarian work in the world and in South Africa, and a great friend and ally of Nelson Mandela. In fact, I have been very privileged to meet him. He's an incredibly lovely man and a great, great, great man in our country. So if you look on the left-hand side of the cathedral, you'll see there's a sign that says the crypt over there. It's a small little sign. Little known secret, people don't really know about it, but the crypt used to be a place where they hid political prisoners during the 80s. South Africa was run by an apartheid government, and so we had a lot of political activists in the country to try and end apartheid. And so in the 80s, volatile times, people used to hide in the crypt. These days, the crypt is actually a jazz club, and money and takings from parts of the takings of the jazz club go back to the church. So that's a little bit unusual. So if you're into jazz, a very cool place to come and experience a little bit of local Cape Town jazz. There's also a local jazz festival in Cape Town. If you plan it and you come ahead of time, you can also check that out. Something else I want to show you guys, if you walk along this way and we spin around, you'll see there it says St. George's Mall. Go around this way. At this area, we have an event that takes place every first Thursday of every month in Cape Town. Currently it's probably a bit quiet, right? Where all local art galleries, a lot of galleries that normally just deal with exporting and their products are sold overseas or not as much locally. On those first Thursdays, they open up their art galleries. They have wine tastings in their galleries. Foodies from all over, restaurant owners, food trucks, anybody that brews beer or wines or anything on a first Thursday in the evenings. The streets are actually cordoned off, lots of music going. So if you are traveling to Cape Town, try and work around those first Thursdays. There's always markets going though, but that first Thursday is a lovely experience. It's a great one to do right in the city. Walk into the street on a first Thursday and suddenly you wonder what's going on. Lovely, great vibes. So this is just around the corner from the St. George's Cathedral where we were. This is the old townhouse building. This was the head office of the National Apartheid government at the time in the 80s. So I want to tell you a story about the Purple Rain. So what happened was on the 2nd of September 1989, just before the apartheid government elections, thousands of protesters got together in the city, all around, in front of the St. George's Cathedral Church that I showed you, and then in front of the National Party building, the old townhouse building. This is actually the Green Market Square area, as you can see in the foreground here. There's actually a lot of markets. It's a market where every single day it's open. A lot of African arts and crafts for sale, lots of craft markets around the area, little coffee shops, little restaurants, all around this part of the city. One can walk through here, you can go change your money, you can go and have a cup of coffee, you can buy yourself an arts and craft, maybe you can buy an African curio or anything like that, and it's negotiable. Yes, so back to the building. So the story is called the Purple Rain Protest. So thousands of protesters were protesting against apartheid, right? So the police, what they did was, and the government, what they did was they mixed purple dye with the water in water cannons. And the idea was that they would spray the crowds and then just arrest everybody later. That was the theory. They did actually arrest a lot of people. A lot of political activists were arrested, and a lot of people were arrested. But a lot of police were also covered in purple dye. So what happened was, in front of the previous church I showed you, there was a water cannon. And one of the protesters actually, after the police opened, they would literally sprayed the crowd. The groups ducked down, boom, to try and get away from the spray. Someone popped behind the cannon and turned the cannon on the building, all over this building. They sprayed all purple everywhere along here, up to 4 stories high. Windows were broken, and this whole building, and people were covered in purple paint everywhere that you can see. This whole area, the streets were covered in purple. Crazy times in our political history. So yeah, they kind of turned on the police. Even one of the windows in the church was broken, and yeah, crazy time in our history. So yeah, that's the story of the Purple Rain. So on the townhouse building, a few days later, a graffiti artist actually sprayed "The Purple Shall Govern," which comes from the anti-apartheid activists. The ANC used to have, the slogan was "The people shall govern." So they sprayed "The purple shall govern." So yeah, just a bit of fun history about our beautiful city, Cape Town. So we're going to head up in this direction. We're going to start heading towards another heritage area. This is an area called Bo-Kaap. Bo-Kaap, if you translate it, means the top of Cape Town. So this area was established around the 1700s and during the time of slavery in the Cape. So a lot of people, the Dutch actually used to rent out these small buildings. Were built in the 1700s. Small little buildings were built up and rented out to Dutch artisans at a smaller rate. And the area was divided into 4 different areas. One of the areas was called the Malay Quarter, or it was actually called the Slave Quarter, where some of the slaves used to live and be kept. Some of the freed slaves at later stage used to rent the buildings. And so there's a mixture of some of the Dutch people living on the one side, renting them. So these were, at that stage, they were white when they were rented out. So as you became freed and you could buy a property, people would paint their houses bright colors. There's different theories about the houses. So anyway, this is Bo-Kaap, also known as the Malay Quarter back in those days, is an area where you find a lot of Malay ancestry, a lot of Muslim people. They came just after, around 1658 already. The Muslim religion was brought into South Africa with the slaves moving in from Indonesia. So the Bo-Kaap, there's different theories why the beautiful bright colors of these buildings. I mean, look at them, it's so expressive. Such a lovely area to go and see. The one theory was the emancipation, so freedom from slavery, so let's paint our houses bright, right? The other theory was there was a special on the paints that were unusual bright colors at the time. The other theory was it represented a different mosque. The expression of freedom from emancipation is the one I kind of like, but the best way to do it is actually, when you come to Cape Town, speak to a local and find out what the locals say, right? I can just give you a couple of the theories. So in the background of here, you can see this hill up here. This is called Signal Hill. So the noon cannon goes up every day at 12 o'clock. So this was a signal to the people living in the town that there's a ship that's pulled in, right? So if the cannon would go off, everyone would run down to the beach and go, hey, strangers, new people coming to visit us, or also to go trade and sell stuff and meet your families or whatever. So that's Signal Hill. Signal Hill It's a great place to go and relax for a sunset. It gives you a beautiful view over the Atlantic Bowl, over the Atlantic Ocean, over Sea Point, Camps Bay, different areas in Cape Town. I'll show you a nice view later on from the top of Table Mountain if you're lucky. So if you look around here, you can see there's an Atlas herb shop, a spices shop. They've been around since back in the day, and they sell any type of spices that you can think of. On this corner here, if you're ever around in town, you pop into that shop. It's called Rose's Cafe. They sell some spices, Cook Sisters. I'll tell you about Cook Sisters now, but actual fact, a little secret for you, just outside the shop, a little bit of competition for the shop, right? Just on the side of the road here, you'll often find a lady standing with her stall, and she sells samosas. Cook Sisters, we call them Cook Sisters, not a Cook Sister in Cape Town. So a Cook Sister, or Cook Sister, is like basically a donut that's dropped in some oil and lots of syrup on it. Delicious, sweet with a lovely Arabic coffee. It is actually delicious. Everyone's granny makes a better one, right? It's different spices and little touches of cardamom, yeah, you have to come try it. So if you ever around and you see Rose's Cafe and you see her little stall there, pop in there, buy a donut from her, a samosa, anything local, and she's a lovely local piece. Her family have been here from the late 1600s, and that's just outside Rose's Cafe. Rose's Cafe also, they do sell lovely donuts, and they also sell Cook Sisters and lots of spices. So if the lady's not outside, you can still support local. We love to support local shops everywhere. Have a look at this. This is Table Mountain. So Table Mountain is about 3,500 feet, about 1,089 meters high. The geology is a sandstone geology, Table Mountain sandstone. Underneath it, it's got quartzite. Back in time, it used to actually be an island. Absolutely incredible. It's also known as Hurikwacha, which is the local people's name for Table Mountain, which means flat top mountain. As you can see, a lot of plant life growing on the mountain here. Absolutely incredible. It's actually considered, it is one of the 7 wonders of nature. It is also part of the Cape Floral Kingdom, which is actually a World Heritage Site. Just the top of Table Mountain itself, you're looking at over 2,500 species of plants, which is way more than the whole of Great Britain. Absolutely incredible. Fynbos it's called, which means fine bush. Got proteas and many, many different species of indigenous flora going up on that mountain. It is absolutely stunning and a must for you to do. What I've got up here is, this is actually one of the better hikes to do. It's called the Plattekloof Gorge. You can see this is the top. When you get to the top, that's the you'll see that when you're walking up, you're like, oh, that's it. So it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to get up. You can just scroll around here a little bit, show you. There's the zigzag of it coming up the mountain. You can literally catch a taxi to the bottom road down there, and you can hike up. And you could also, I'll show you a bit later, you can catch a cable car back down, or you can catch a cable car up and down, depending on your time, right? A nice one to do is hike up, catch a cable car down, go and catch a nice brunch, and then go do something for the afternoon, you know? So yeah, that just gives you an idea of how the hike actually looks. It's probably the most doable one of all the hikes. There's at least 19 different hikes you can do. We can do a guided one. We do have suppliers that do actual guided hikes up the mountain. If you want to do a more intense hike, there's many. We can just speak to your CEO when you come to Cape Town, and we'll connect you up with the right right supplier to take you up the mountain. Just for interest sakes, this mountain top over here is called the Devil's Peak. Lovely story about that. Also a nice brewery in Cape Town. They use spring water from the mountain to produce lovely ale. As we slide across here, you start seeing the bowl of Cape Town. In the distance over there, that island over there, is the famous Robben Island. So Robben Island is where a lot of political activists and even a Zulu king spent some time on Robben Island. Nelson Mandela actually spent 18 of his 27 years of incarceration on that island. Can you just imagine that? It's crazy, right? Just on the bottom foreground here, this is, if you use your imagination a little bit, this is the Lion's Head. And this down the bottom there is the Signal Hill, great place for sunsets, sunset drinks. Top of Lion's Head also has unique fynbos that you don't find anywhere else. A great hike, little secret local spot. Some people Go up there in the mornings before work. After work, it's one of those local places where you find a lot of people going up and down. It's about an hour and a half. If you're quite fit, maybe an hour up, an hour down, depending on your fitness levels, right? There are some bits that are actually quite a kind of steep climbs, and there's a chain ladder where you can climb up the ladder, or you can do a short route. You'll see if you do it, the locals sometimes go around past the chain, go past it and go around. It's a slightly easier route up to the top. Just a little bit of local knowledge. Grab yourself a bottle of wine, some snacks, put in your bag, get to the top and go and have a lovely sunset, or have a nice coffee in the morning before you start work. Great way to start your day. And now we're actually at a place called the Cape of Good Hope, also known as the Cape Peninsula. Cape Point is just above this. So this is the Cape of Point, the most southwestern point on the African continent. If you head towards the east, there's a place called Cape Agulhas, about 150 kilometers from Cape Town, and that is actually the most southern point in Africa. Also worthwhile going to take a drive along the coastal route if you have a few days or a week. Grab a hire vehicle or do a tour of one of our suppliers, our preferred suppliers, and you can head around the coast to a place called Hermanus along the coastline, and you can end up in Agulhas. You can stay there in Airbnb or just explore and go to the most southern point of Africa. So yeah, this is the most southwestern point of Africa, also called the Cape of Good Hope, because if you must remember, in the later times, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, the Cape of Good Hope was named by the Portuguese king due to the fact that it was a positive thing, is that it was the opening of the route to the east, which led to the spice route and the trading in the east for the world. So the Cape of Good Hope is a great name. Cape Point is also known for its storms. So Cape Town is also known as Cape of Good Hope. Cape of Storms is another reason. So if you look off the coast here, it's very calm today. Lighthouse on top, built in the 1800s to help ships when they were traveling around the point of Cape Town. Cape Point's ocean is notoriously dangerous, and there are many shipwrecks off this coast. This thing is actually very calm. So the lighthouse was built in the 1800s to help warn the ships when they're passing the Cape, to protect themselves from hitting the reefs or landing on the beaches and wrecking their ships. So yeah, that is Cape Point. One can actually, if you look in the photo down the bottom, there's actually a parking lot. There's a restaurant, there's a curio shop. One can actually walk up. It's about a 15 to 20 minute walk, and then 10 minute down, right? So it's a quick walk up, enjoy the view. It's a nice little walk up actually. Or you can catch the Funacula. It's called the Flying Dutchman, which is named after a famous ghost ship. The Flying Dutchman is said to have appeared a few times over the centuries to people that are in trouble out there in the storms. It's a famous old pirate ship called the Flying Dutchman. I'll tell you about that when you come back. So yeah, you can catch that up if time is a problem. So on the right here, you'll see a calmer bay. This is called False Bay. So we're going to head down there, and I'm going to show you some beautiful African penguins. As we left the Cape Point, Cape Peninsula, we were heading towards a town called Simonstown. So Simonstown is literally about 15-20 minutes from Cape Point, from the gate. This is a town that was established in the late 1680s, one of the oldest towns. It is known for our South African naval base, and it's named Simonstown after our first governor of the Cape, Simon van der Stel. I'm going to take you to his wine estate, the first wine estate in South Africa, a little bit later on, but let me show you some penguins. Right, so as you can see in the picture, they are the African penguin, or also previously known as the jackass penguin, because when they do call, they sound like a donkey, like So the jackass penguin, or the African penguin, also known as the Cape penguin. So these guys are, where you can see them right, are at an area called Boulders. So Boulders Beach, easily accessible. There's a lovely boardwalk that you can walk down, and you can get pretty close to the penguins, and you can have a look and get quite close and experience the African penguin. So endangered species found along the coastline from Cape Town up to Port Elizabeth, up until Namibia. The reason that the population has been depleted is due to overfishing of pelagic fish, or pelagic fish, like your pilchards, anchovies. The other thing that penguins do feed on is squid and octopus, and all of those things are pursued by us humans, right? So overfishing and also oil spills. So it led to their population dropping down significantly over the last 10, 20 years or so. So they are now protected and one of our gems in Cape Town. So the African penguin, as you can see, Boulders Beach is a lovely, lovely beach as well. African penguins mate for life. They tend to like to nest in the same area. So back in the 80s, one pair came into Boulders Beach, started nesting, kept coming back. So more and more pairs of penguins started enjoying nesting in Boulders and Simonstown. And that's how the population increased over time. So now, if you're looking at the last time I had figures, was looking at over 2,000 penguins in the Cape area, in the Simonstown area. They do come into molt sometimes, so you'll find they actually drop off their feathers and they stay on the beach for a while till their feathers regrow. And they tend to move about 12 to 14 kilometers off the coastline, and they'll go looking for fish, bring back food to their babies. So yeah, Boulders Beach is one of those great gems in Cape Town. It's definitely a must, and yeah, who doesn't love a penguin, right? We've traveled down from Simonstown from the beautiful penguins. Now we're at Groot Constantia. Groot Constantia was also owned by Simon van der Stel, who I mentioned Simonstown is named after. He was the first governor in the Cape. Groot Constantia is the oldest wine estate in South Africa. As you can see, I'm showing you guys around here, showing you the vines growing on this beautiful Groot Constantia Valley. And I'll just pop you over here. This is one of the wine cellars that one can see. Easy to get to from town on a G Adventures trip. You can add that on. You could do wine tours with our suppliers, or you could just pop over to the wine estate a few days before you come on tour. Yeah, just get a little bit of a taste of a wine estate before you start your trip. And there are many wine estates in Cape Town. The wine industry started in South Africa due to the religious persecution of the Protestants. They fled to Holland, and the Dutch didn't know what to do with all the extra people, so they sent them to the Cape Colony. With that, they brought their viticulture, their vines, and they brought the wine industry to Africa, to South Africa, when also influenced our culture, our language was influenced by the French moving to South Africa. So Groot Constantia, been around since 1685, owned by Simon van der Stel back then. He'd actually studied viticulture before he moved to the colony, so it was a passion of his already. So at Groot Constantia, one can get from white wines, red wines, fortified wines, sparkling wines. They have beautiful chocolate pairings. They've got 2 restaurants where they only serve locally grown, sustainably grown produce. They also like to focus on local things. They have like a great slow roasted lamb, or you can have a baboti, which is a spicy minced curry with a little bit of chutney inside, raisins, spices, and egg custard on top, done in an oven. Absolutely delicious. And these are all paired with the incredible wines. Groot Constantia has also been around, because it's been around for such a long time. It's actually even mentioned in Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, where it is actually said to be a cure for heartache. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting fact about Groot Constantia. So yeah, I'd just love to thank you for this opportunity to give you guys a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of a virtual tour of Cape Town. There is so much more to see. There's so many activities that can be done in and around Cape Town. There's wine tours, there's adventure tours, there's more historical tours, there's more walking tours. Amazing amount of things that can be done. Can't wait to get back to work, and I can't wait to see all of you. Please come to Africa, please come to South Africa, please come to Cape Town. I can't wait to see you and can't wait to be your seer, your guide. Ciao.